Finally, we're recording this video. This was meant to come out last month, but it was, as you can hopefully see from the title a little bit, it was kind of contingent on the latest main channel video coming out, the video on remakes. So yeah, I mean, this video, as you can see in the title, is about my fascination with retro games and real hardware. Or playing on real hardware, I should say, yeah. Yeah, so like, I've always been the guy. I remember when Resident Evil 4, or, just generally a bunch of Resident Evil games coming to Switch, that was announced, and, I was immediately like, well, with RE4, it's gonna be the HD version, right? And it's not gonna be as good as the GameCube version, so who cares, right? I was that guy. And then I was immediately bombarded with people being like, oh, a re-release that you don't like? What the fuck? Because this always comes up when any game is re-released, this, like, skepticism from my side. And people are getting super tired of it. And on the one hand, I guess I kind of understand it, that it's annoying. But on the other, my motivation for the remakes video really was to get people to, like, be a little bit smarter about these re-releases, to read up on this stuff more, and to not fucking waste their money every time one of them comes out. Because it really, it just really annoys me to see it every time. And I did see it again almost immediately after I released the video, with Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 coming out on the Switch. Because I would see people buy those ports that are known to have huge problems, right? Buy those ports, play them, immediately notice that something is wrong about the way they look, with the sprites and with the scaling of the background tiles and stuff like that. Obviously they don't really understand what is wrong, they just know something's wrong, right? And it's like, you could have avoided this had you just done more research, right? And yeah, that was one of the biggest. Does this sound like snobby, or I don't know, like, obviously it's not my business, right? It's not my money. People can do with their money what they want. I don't want to make it sound like I'm the fucking genius around town, you know? But I feel like, I mean, yeah, what I said in the video is that it really does have sort of an adverse overall effect on the industry, you know, that we're showing these publishers that will just fucking buy anything, right? We care more about the sort of the visibility and the hype surrounding a release than the quality of the release itself. But yeah, I mean, now I'm just reiterating everything I said in the remakes video. Yeah, so what I wanted to get at in this video is sort of explain how I even got to this point, right? Why I fucking care so much about these little intricacies and the details in those games. And again, in the remakes video, I really wanted to, like, emphasize that that shit is important, you know? You have to think the developers put a lot of time and a lot of care and a lot of their talent into making the games look and sound and sort of function in the way that they do in their original incarnations. Narelle put out a great video on comparing the different versions of Secret of Mana. or I should say the different versions of all the Secret of Mana games. Well, not all of them. The first 3. And yeah, he goes into a lot of detail about how they, use like different kinds of shading to highlight the brickwork and like the the background tiles and stuff like that. It's really fascinating. And like that stuff is just lost once you fucking turn on the HQ2X filter on your fucking shitty emulator and put it on the iPhone, right? And most people don't really, I don't know. Yeah. See, I feel bad every time I say, oh, most people don't care about that, right? It sounds very obnoxious. I can see why people are so annoyed when I talk about this stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. I was born in 94. So you can imagine I missed out on a lot of games. Missed out on a bunch of consoles. I mean, my first console was the Super Nintendo. But obviously didn't have money to buy games until like the PS2, you know? So I was kind of reliant on my parents randomly just getting me new games and shit, which didn't really happen a lot. We got a bunch of games with the console when we bought it. So with the Super Nintendo, and I think, the Super Nintendo was just a hand-me-down from my parents. I think it was like my mom's actual Super Nintendo. And then the N64, we bought it like, when it was kind of at the end of its life. And we bought it with a shit ton of games. And I was kind of, not even that many games, but yeah, I was stuck with those games. Never really bought any more games. So really, once I sort of started using the internet, I kind of learned, just how far behind I was, with like, games that are important in the zeitgeist, games that are considered must-plays. And then, see, this sounds like I'm fucking detailing my past trauma or something, but yeah, because I remember talking to like a friend about this in school, where he was like, why the fuck do you buy so many games? Why are you so obsessed with games? And I was like, yeah, maybe it's because I didn't have as many games as I wanted as a kid, because I remember the 7th gen. That's where I really went crazy with buying games, that's where I actually had my own money and had a lot to spend and like, not that much to spend, but like, I was just always on the lookout for buying games and playing more games. Honestly, looking back on it now, it really does feel like I was fucking compensating for my childhood. Just kind of sad. So obviously, grew up using emulators. Probably not a huge surprise, right? Was hella into emulators. I'd say sort of in the mid 2010s, I remember, for example, had a PS3, played like the demo for Metal Gear Solid 4. And that was the first time I played a Metal Gear game. I was like, oh my god, this is the coolest shit. And then, obviously, I thought, well, I can't just jump into this, right? So I played Metal Gear Solid 1 on an emulator. See, with how picky I am about emulation and, accuracy, I guess, in games, I can't even imagine how shitty the emulator or the emulation must have been when I played that. Like, yeah, it's weird for me to think about now that I actually put up with that sort of thing. Yeah, because like these days I wouldn't. These days I would, only go for the best of the best, which is real hardware. But yeah, just because of emulators, I was just playing a shit ton of older games. And so I'm trying to think. What was like my moment of awakening? Because yeah, I used those homebrew emulators for a long time to just catch up on older games, and like I didn't really think about it, right? At some point I'd modded my Wii, soft modded my Wii, and had a bunch of emulators on there, like for the GBA, the Super Nintendo, and I think yeah, that's so. At some point, I kind of started disassociating from fucking PC shit. Not political correctness shit. I mean, personal computer shit. I'm always trying to be politically correct. So yeah. Once I went to the Wii, I realized, oh wow, a lot of these emulators don't actually run that well. Like for, again, for the GBA and stuff. And, oh yeah. And then I, like, for example, started buying PS2 games on the PS3, and PS1 games as well, and I realized, wow, this is actually way better than emulating them on PC. Like, obviously Sony's engineers, they just know the hardware really well. Yeah, and they know how to build something that actually works well with what they have. Oh yeah, and oh god, I was so fucking into the PSP, with mods and shit. I played through Aria of Sorrow like at least 4 times on the PSP GBA emulator. And yeah, that's how I played a lot of PS1 games. I was hella into fucking converting PS1 ISO files into PSP games. I'm sure some of you listening like remember that kind of shit. Just using those weird ass programs. God, I'm getting very nostalgic right now. And yeah, like that way, I just immediately noticed how like there's bad emulation, there's good emulation. And then I think I just sort of slowly started trying to like build a whole like suite of, okay, these are the ideal consoles to play whatever fucking games on that I want. So for example, with the Wii U, right? A thing that you can do, the 3DS as well. A thing you can do, and it was on the Wii as well. Yeah. So what you can do is you can basically take a virtual console game, right? The way the virtual console works is that it's an emulator, with the ROM already sort of inside it, right? And what hackers have found out is that you can remove the ROM and put in a different ROM. And use Nintendo's emulator, which generally tends to be better than a lot of homebrew emulation. Especially on the Wii U, yeah. For example, the GBA emulator is really good. Yeah, and through hacking, that can become like one of the best ways to play GBA games with like pretty low input lag, integer scaling, pretty accurate color representation. And like I definitely noticed the difference, right? And it wasn't like an immediate moment of awakening. It was just sort of a slower realization. Okay, wow, this is actually way better than any method I had before. Especially with the input lag. That's something I more and more over the years picked up on. I think especially like the last 3 years or so, yeah. That's when I started becoming really sensitive to it. Oh my god, the Super Nintendo Classic was a big one. I'd always, yeah, I mean, I had a Super Nintendo as a kid, right? But most of my Super Nintendo games that I played was on emulators, right? And then I played the Super Nintendo Classic, and it was like having the wool just stripped from your eyes for the first time, you know? Just how much more fucking responsive the games felt on the Super Nintendo Classic. And to be fair, even on the SNES Classic, you have like another, is it like 1 or 2 frames extra input lag compared to original hardware? And honestly, that sounds like a lot, but comparatively, it's really not. Compared to PC and other homebrew methods, it's one of the fastest. But yeah, I'm still now. So I was really happy with the SNES Classic, like having it modded and putting my own games on it and shit. But even like now, I'm already again at the point where I'm like, maybe I should just get a real Super Famicom. And yeah, that's when you get into the territory of, okay, well, if you have, I still have my childhood Super Nintendo, right? But you can't actually play 60 hertz games on it. Oh yeah, the 50 and 60 hertz difference was also huge. Just slowly realizing how at what kind of huge disadvantage I was my whole life for living in Europe, and having to play. I mean, see, I noticed as a kid with games like FF10 that something was wrong, right? Like just watching Titus walk across the screen and like just how like things just looked unnaturally wide. And as a kid, obviously I didn't fucking understand why, but now I do. I think that was also a big reason why I stopped buying like older games for a while when I was younger, you know, because I didn't have a way to import them. It was just easier to fucking download them on the internet and then play them on the emulator or something. And I was getting a better experience because they were not 50 hertz. Wow. But yeah, I think with like, hang on, what was like the first sort of retro console that I bought? When did I buy the RetroTink? The RetroTink is an upscaler. Even that's not really accurate, right? It's actually a line doubler. So, basically, there's a bunch of devices that you can plug an analog signal into, like composite. Composite is the little yellow cable. I'm sure that's the one most of you are familiar with, right? The yellow, red, white. The red and white is just for audio. The one that you're interested in is the video cable, the composite one. And because it's just a single little shitty yellow cable, it's not very good. That's like well, it's not the worst video signal you can get, but it's very bad. Huge step up from that would be S-Video. It's like the same setup. You have 2 audio connectors, but then the video connector is like a little bit bigger and a little bit more solid. It's like a black one. If you have that, you can like actually be very satisfied. Like you can get really good quality with that. And then the step up from that would be RGB, and then another way. Well, yeah. So if you're from the US, we have this connector here in Europe called SCART. It's like a really wide thing. And for us, we could just plug that straight into the TV, and like that's the best quality. Well, yeah, if it's like an RGB cable with a SCART connector at the end, that's like the best quality you could get. We also, in Europe, we used to use the SCART connector to hook up composite, for example, with like a little adapter. Whereas in the US, it was more common to just plug it straight into the TV. They would have, just little tiny holes in the TV. And then, there's component, where the connectors look like the composite connectors, but you have 3 of them for video. And that's also, the quality is like equivalent to RGB, but you tend to have more functions, or like the potential for higher level signals with component, like 480p, for example. Though I'm even seeing 480p shit with SCART cables these days, which is kind of crazy. There's like a Dreamcast SCART, RGB SCART cable that lets you do 480p. It's pretty nuts. And that's kind of something I want to get. Yeah. I think an important thing to mention is Nintendo's on the Wii U. It's this homebrew program that lets you play GameCube games on the Wii U, because as it turns out, the Wii U essentially, it just has a whole Wii inside it, right? I mean, you all know that it has the Wii mode, but then the Wii mode still has a whole GameCube inside it. It just doesn't have the physical hardware to actually use the internal guts of the GameCube. It doesn't have the controller ports. It doesn't have the disk drive. And like, it's really, yeah. I mean, you have to think. I mean, we have this homebrew method now to play GameCube games, right? And you have to think it should have been easy for Nintendo to, to make something like that for the eShop on the Wii U, right? To have GameCube games on the eShop, but they never did. It's so weird. But yeah, I think that was it. I think that was the moment. I started playing GameCube games on the Wii U, and that was like the best method to do it. Now you have the shit like the Carby and the Eon for the GameCube, where they basically just speak to the digital connector inside the GameCube to get a lossless HDMI signal. I think that's even better than the Wii U method. But yeah, on the Wii U, it's HDMI signal. There is some analog noise, but yeah, it's still very clean, and it's integer scaling. So it's like, it's 480p in sort of a 9. See, all this shit is probably like way over people's heads, but yeah, it's in a 960p window, so you have slight black borders on the 1080p screen. It looks very good, and you can use the official GameCube adapter for Smash as well. So like, it acts just like a real GameCube, and there's no extra input lag, and it's really fucking good. And I was way into the PS2 and the original Xbox as well at the time. And that's when I realized, okay, I want that kind of experience for those consoles. And obviously the only way to get that is with original hardware, right? And I still have my PS2. Yeah, I think I wasn't so fussed about the image quality because I already had component cables for the PS2 and for the Xbox. With the Xbox, it's a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit harder to get good component cables. I still don't have a good solution for the original Xbox. But yeah, with the PS2, I've had good component cables for a long time, because that was just the best way to hook them up to my TV in my room. What I really wanted with the PS2 was just a way to play pirated games, you know? That, like, yeah, this whole retro thing, for me, it was always a two-step process. It was image quality, but then also being able to play pirated games on it. Yeah. I can't believe I didn't talk about that aspect up to this point. That, obviously with with emulators, it's very easy to just fucking download the game and then drag the ISO or the ROM or whatever in. And that's one of the biggest motivations for people to use emulators, because they can't fucking afford Xenosaga Volume 2 or something, and that's their only. They would prefer to play it on the real console, but that's just their only way. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to play on a real console, but I also want to not spend €100 on a copy of fucking, what's an expensive PS3 game? Rule of the Rose. That's more than €100. yeah, so I got way into that with the PS2. I bought one of those hacked memory cards, and then I started streaming games to the PS2. Basically, you can hook up a computer to your PlayStation 2 with an Ethernet cable, and then stream games from your PC's hard drive to the PS2. And like that method has problems, and it's a little jank, and it's a huge hassle as well, just in terms of the setup. But like, it is pretty good. It is surprisingly good. It's surprisingly fast in terms of the load times as well. Like, it's not that much worse than playing off a CD. Yeah, and that's how for example, that's how I played Yakuza 1 and 2. See, now I just have a fucking copy of Yakuza 2 because I'm really cool. A real copy. Like a UK copy, I think, yeah. I still need Yakuza 1. That game is not as expensive as the second game. Yeah. So I got into that, and then not that long ago, I bought a hard drive, and like a hard drive for the PS2, and a fat PS2, because I had, from when I was a kid, I had the Slim, but the Slim doesn't support hard drives, and yeah, I was just tired of the fucking hassle of streaming games, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna buy a PS2 with a hard drive. And honestly, it's not that expensive. Like, the PS2 is so cheap these days. I think, honestly, that's always my message. Like, it's so easy to get a better experience, right? It's really not that huge of an effort. Yeah. It was the same thing with the Xbox. Actually modding the Xbox was kind of a process, because modding the Xbox to play pirated games, because number one, I still don't have like a hard drive for the Xbox. I don't want to open it up. I'm too lazy. Because yeah, you have to, I guess you could burn the games to like DVD or something. But that sounds like a hassle as well. Yeah. With like dual layer DVDs and shit. That sounds like that sounds complicated. So yeah, because right now what I have to do is like the Xbox already has a hard drive, of course, and I have to via Ethernet just transfer the games over with like an FTP client, and then play them off the hard drive, and it's only like 8 gigs or something, so you have barely any room. And yeah, I wanted to play fucking Doom 3 on my Xbox. Which, I know that's hilarious, right? Hilarious that in 2019 I would buy the original Xbox version of Doom 3 over the fucking HD version. I have my reasons, okay? Leave me alone. But like, I couldn't just pirate it because I didn't like... That's the thing, it was like a huge game, and that's why you can't find good rips of it online. Or compatible rips, I should say, yeah. And I couldn't just buy a German copy of the game because, it was 50 hertz, right? So I ended up importing an American copy from Japan to play it. That's crazy, right? Yeah, so once I had those consoles more or less sorted out, right, the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, I thought, okay, I need to do the same thing with the previous generation, right, with the 5th gen. I think it started with the, wait, did I buy the Dreamcast or the Saturn first? I don't remember. Yeah, the Dreamcast was a huge blind spot for me for a long time. And then at some point I bought a Dreamcast. And yeah, Dreamcast is really cool because it has really nice ways to connect to a display with HDMI. like, I mean, so you have these really shitty, cheap VGA cables, and then you can hook those up to an HDMI adapter, and that's really easy, and the quality is still pretty good, and that's what I did for a while before I got the Gecko, which is just, it taps into the VGA signal of the Dreamcast, and outputs it in, as HDMI. Yeah. See, with the Dreamcast now, the thing I need to do is fucking buy those. Is fucking buy that SD adapter, SD card adapter, where you swap out the disk drive with just a fucking little SD card reader, so you can play games off the SD card, because the Dreamcast had sort of its own proprietary disc format, the GD-ROM, I think is what it was called. And it's like not quite a CD, a little bit bigger than a average CD, but not as big as a DVD. And people kind of exploited that. Well, yeah, so the Dreamcast had another. There was a format supported on the Dreamcast called mil-CD, which was popular in Japan for like music and shit. And the Dreamcast did not have any kind of copy protection for that. So what people started doing is they just converted Dreamcast games to mil-CD, so you could burn them and shit. The problem is just like, if you have a CD that's like 700 megabytes, it's probably not going to be enough to hold bigger Dreamcast games like Shenmue and shit. So people would just start reducing the audio quality and stuff like that, just to get them to fit on the CD. And if you try burning Dreamcast games now, it's such a fucking pain in the ass. Yeah. And that's why I wanna, like, the mod for the SD thing, there was like a different term for it. There was like a better, hang on, let me check. It had like a name. I hate saying the SD reader for the Dreamcast. It had like an actual name. See, I like had this moment earlier where I sort of paused because I realized that I fucking forgot to talk about something really important. I was like right in the middle of talking about upscalers and shit and explaining what they were, and then I moved on to something else. GDMU is what it was called. Yeah. The cool thing about the GDMU is that the installation is actually very easy. You don't need to solder anything. And that, like, when I found out about that, I was like, okay, I need to get one of these. And they're only like $60 now. Well, there's like a clone of the GDMU for $60. Yeah, you can just get that. And that's what I'll do. And then I'll finally have the Dreamcast kind of sorted out. There is an even better method now to connect to HDMI, where instead of going through the VGA first, you just tap into the graphics card directly. But that's, it's a mod, it's complicated, so I'm not gonna do that. Like, I'm pretty happy with the image quality as it is. I guess I should talk. Yeah, I think it makes sense too. So, I said earlier, I wanted to achieve the same thing that I did with the PS2 and shit for the 5th gen consoles. And I think the first one, that sort of went hand in hand with buying a Sega Saturn. Because I want to get into Sega consoles way more, starting with the Dreamcast. Obviously, the next one on the list was the Saturn. Yeah, I got my good friend Bjorn fixed on the Saturn as well. No, not fixed, hooked on the Saturn. Yeah. I need to, yeah. See, I feel bad because I've had the Saturn for a while and I haven't played that many games on it yet. I tried a bunch of games, right, and had a lot of fun just doing that. But yeah, I didn't actually finish that many games yet. Same with the Dreamcast, to be honest. I played through all of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 on the Dreamcast. What else did I play? I played Resident Evil 1 on the Saturn. That's a pretty cool version of that game, because the Saturn famously uses quads instead of polygons. Polygons are little triangles that you use to construct the models in a game. I think y'all know that. But quads are like squares. So the games on the Saturn just look really fucking weird. Oh yeah, I fucking played Panzergrenade Saga recently. I want to make a video of Panzergrenade Saga. Because a lot of people obviously haven't played it, right? And I think that'd be interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna keep my opinion a secret for now. I think I bought the Retro Tank. So yeah, as I wanted to explain just now, you have different devices that you can plug an analog signal into that then output HDMI and that tend to convert the signal in a way that the TV can actually understand it. God, there's so many fucking layers to this. So yeah, like most newer TVs don't have analog inputs. They just have HDMI, right? So that's the first problem. No, you can get a fucking shitty cable on Amazon for like €10. That's like plug in composite and you get HDMI. And like composite is already shitty quality, right? But then the device, it doesn't output a signal that's actually like accurate. So okay, you have to think that obviously games, the image of a game is made of pixels, right? And you can think of it as lines of pixels, as horizontal lines. Obviously there's vertical lines as well, right? Because every pixel is just a square. But really what we're interested in is the horizontal lines. Because back in the day with cable and shit, TVs, yeah, satellite signals and all that, we didn't have the bandwidth to send all the lines on a single frame, right? So, I mean, you know, fucking video runs at frames per second. And usually every frame has a total of 480 lines. I only recently learned that with CRTs, you don't actually have a fixed pixel grid, right? It's actually really flexible and you can just put whatever fucking resolution you want on it, which is kind of crazy to think about. Digital Foundry had this whole ass video about how good CRTs are, and it really fascinated me. I have a little shitty CRT here. I mean, I say shitty, like, it's just a random CRT, you know? And it's fine. But yeah, so back in the day, common resolution was 480 lines, right? But we didn't have the bandwidth to actually send all those lines to the TV at once, both with TV satellite program, right? But also with games. It wasn't until we had component cables, you know, with the PS2 and with the Xbox and the GameCube, where the cables were actually shielded and solid enough that we could send a full 480 lines on a single frame. So what games would do instead was to either send only a constant 240 lines with sort of black lines in between, right? So you have a line, then a black line, then a line, then a black line, and so on and so forth. And that's how you get the scanline look with classic games on the Super Nintendo and shit. I'm sure some of you listening just had a fucking revelation. I fucking blew your mind just now, hopefully. That's what we did in, sort of the first couple gens, right? We did on the NES, Super Nintendo, even the PS1 and 64 Saturn. But then with the PS2, what became way more common is to do 480i, which is also what you would see with TV programs way more. And that is to essentially on one frame, you send 240 lines with black spaces in between. And then on the next frame, you would send the other 240 lines that were black before. And would just sort of alternate between those two constantly. And in theory, yeah, you get a fuller, more detailed image that way, or the illusion of a fuller, more detailed image. Of a single image. It tricks the eye that way. But the downside is that you get a constant kind of flickering effect. And honestly, you can. So yeah, I've been into modding the GameCube recently, for example, and you can force games to run at 240p on the GameCube, which is pretty freaking cool. Because yeah, I did that on my CRT, and I just immediately noticed how much better the games looked at 240p versus 480i. Like the scan lines didn't bother me nearly as much, and the scan lines, the loss of detail, if you will. Like I'm losing detail, but it still didn't bother me as much as the flickering. I tried it with Killer 7. I thought the game just looked really cool with scan lines, and that's why you see people put scan lines on like GameCube games and PS2 games and shit, which makes, I mean, if you think about it, that makes no fucking sense, because we never actually saw those games with scan lines. That's not how they were made. You have exceptions on the PS2, like Eco, for example, is actually a 240p game. So that game had scan lines. The more you know. Yeah. So like with 480p, again, that became, yeah, I mean 480p is interesting because so it's like a constant 480 lines. So it gets rid of that interlaced disadvantage, it gets rid of the flickering, but also it has the full image. It's like, it's very clearly more detailed than a 240p image. It doesn't have the scan lines. And that sort of thing was huge on the GameCube and the Xbox. On the PS2, not actually as much. And I think that, see, I don't really, like, so everything that I've just talked about with interlace and stuff, I think that is like on a video pixel kind of level. But the PS2 had this thing called field rendering, where it could actually like physically render the games with fewer pixels per frame, right? It could just render 240 lines on a single frame, and then the other 240 on the next frame. I'm sure like some of you are completely lost now, but basically it would just reduce the rendering load and allow games to run at 60 FPS more easily. And that's why you had so many games running at 60 FPS on the PS2. Like Metal Gear Solid 2, and the Tekkens, fucking Valkyrie Profile 2. Well, that game actually has a 480p mode, I think. Whoa. That game actually has I think that game has a 1080i mode as well, in Japan. That's fucking nuts. Yeah. So yeah, you don't actually have that many 480p games on the PS2. And that's why the PS2 is like the most pain in the ass to get to work with modern TVs, because so yeah, I wanted to explain with upscalers, right? They convert the signal in such a way where the TV can understand it, right? So what the shitty, cheap upscalers do, what I wanted to explain earlier, is that they interpret 240p as 480i, right? So instead of, yeah, I don't really even understand what exactly happens, right? But you want the constant 240 lines with the black lines in between, right? But what they'll do instead is sort of smoosh the image together and yeah, send it as a 480i signal to the TV, right? So not only does the scaler degrade the quality of the image by itself, but also your TV, like every modern TV, obviously they're kind of equipped to deal with lower resolutions. But yeah, with 480i signals, they have to go through their own deinterlacing process, is what it's called. So they get rid of the flickering effect, right? But that either will reduce the image quality. I mean, that's not that common. I've never actually seen that. Maybe that's not true. No, the thing that really happens is that in this deinterlacing process, they will add a lot of input lag. And that's really, when you hook up an old console to your TV, usually that, and you feel input lag, that's usually what causes it, the deinterlacing process, yeah. Even if you have a modern TV with some kind of analog input, they will often misinterpret the 240p as 480i, which really sucks, obviously. Yeah, like it will just look completely smooth. The telltale sign is that if you stand still, it looks fine, but then once you start moving, it gets just really smushed. Because I think there's like some kind of deinterlacing in the scaler already, in the shitty cheap scaler. Yeah. And it sucks. Now, personally, if the TV I own right now has component input, and I've always, like, whenever I bought an HD TV, I made sure it had a component input, because that just makes your life way easier. But yeah, see, there's component cables now for the Super Nintendo, Sega Mega Drive. But if you plug those into your TV, they're gonna attempt to send a 240p signal, and your TV is not gonna understand it, in my case anyway. I can't, even though my TV knows what 240p is, it can't actually display that over component. So I will just get a black image. And that's why, for example, on the PS2, I can't actually play PS1 games on my PlayStation 2 when it's hooked up to the TV. Because as we learned before, PS1 games are 240p. So yeah, I had to get a scaler, right? I had to get a good scaler. And like, the two big ones that everyone kind of knows about are the OSSC and the FrameMeister, and they each do it slightly differently. The FrameMeister adds a little bit more processing and makes the games look a lot nicer. Like, it really gives you the cleanest fucking possible quality you can imagine. But the downside of the FrameMeister is that it adds some input lag. I think 1.5 frames, which honestly is not that bad. I've never tried the FrameMeister, but to me it doesn't sound that bad. And the FrameMeister has a similar deinterlacing process to what modern TVs do. So like, it looks very stable and very sharp. If you plug in like a 480i PS2 game, for example. And then you only have 1.5 frames of input lag versus what your TV would give you, you know? So that's pretty good. But the FrameMeister, it's a Japan import and it's hella expensive. Yeah. But for PS2, like, it would still be your ideal solution, like, if you want the best image quality. Now, from what I understand, the FrameMeister doesn't deal with 480p very well, So if you want, but like, I mean, it doesn't really matter because you can just, yeah, you can just input the 480i mode for those games, and like it's not a lot of games anyway, and it will probably look almost the same, right, as proper 480p. I can tell I'm probably losing so many of you right now. I'm getting so technical. But then the other one is the OSSC, and instead of an image processor, instead of an upscaler, a true upscaler, it just, I don't really know how it does it, to be honest, but like, it's a line doubler, right? It's, yeah, I honestly, I don't know how the fuck it works. I should have read out with that. But yeah, the point of the OSSC is that it's just way faster than the FrameMaster. It does it with no extra input lag. And it also deals with 480p really well. So you can output. Yeah, I think it can even like line triple for like. I said it's a line doubler. It's actually it's a line multiplier. You can go way higher than doubling. Yeah, so if you have a 1080p TV, you could line double 480p to 960p, and kind of like I explained with GameCube games, you could display them in a little window, and that'd be like really clean, nice quality. The downside of the OSSC. Number one, it doesn't support S-Video, and yeah, I talked about that earlier, right? It's a pretty big jump from composite, which is the shittiest cable, to S-Video. S-Video is actually really good already. And there are some consoles that max out at S-Video, like the N64. And I really wanted to play N64, right? And so for me, that wasn't really an option. And you can't, like, the hardware needs to be inside the thing, so you can't just use an adapter or something. It's not possible. And the other big downside, and yeah, I myself have not found a solution that with my setup either as well, is that the deinterlacing uses a method that sort of also kind of smooshes the frames and produces a flickering effect. Like, it looks better than what you get with the cheap, shitty scaler, but it still looks really weird. You can see my remakes video. That's how I recorded all the PS2 games that you see. And honestly, I've kind of gotten used to the look. Some games just work really well with it, and some games don't. I think Final Fantasy X, for example, like, looked actually really fucking good. But then, yeah, I thought a really busy, graphically busy game like Jak and Daxter is not really favored by the BOP deinterlacing. And it's the kind of thing you just want a FrameMaster for. Now, yeah, obviously this is all like for hooking up to a TV just generally, but the actual reason I bought the RetroTink. Oh yeah, I didn't even get into this. So yeah, there is a third fucking option on the market called the RetroTink, and it basically uses the same exact principle as the OSSC. It's a line multiplier. In the case of the RetroTink, it's just line doubling, and you can't even, and that's the biggest downside of the RetroTink, you can't input 480p signals, which really sucks. Because I would love to be able to just input 480p and get 480p out of it, because you can do that with 240p, right? You can input a 240p signal and just spit out 240p. You can just have the device not do anything to it if you prefer that. For example, if you want to send it to a CRT, that probably makes more sense to do it that way, right? With 240p. But yeah, if I wanted to like play original Xbox, I could not do that because the games run, like all of them run at 480p. like if I want the best quality, right, I can't use the RetroSync. So that sucks, but it has S-Video support, and it's way cheaper than the OSSC, and that's why I got it. And I got it mostly for recording. And yeah, see, when I bought it, I didn't realize how weird the bob deinterlacing would look. You know, I wasn't really prepared for that. I can't believe I've been fucking recording for an hour. Yeah, I like got it planning, oh dude, I'm gonna fucking record hella PS2 games with that. But see, these days I'm like fine with the look. I'm like, I think I'm okay with my PS2 games, with my PS2 footage looking like that. The thing I'm more concerned about is that the flickering is really fucking bad for your TV. If you have a HUD on the screen, it's gonna be burned into the screen if you play with bob deinterlacing. Yeah. That sucks. With capture cards and stuff, you'll want to send them a progressive signal, because most capture cards can't understand the interlaced signal. They will just sort of smoosh the frames together and give you half the frame rate. So with a 30 FPS game, you get 15 frames because, you know, it's interlaced. It's just, you only get half the lines on frame, right? So all the other frames would just be completely black. And the capture card will just cut those out. Because again, it can see both. Yeah, I don't actually understand how exactly it works, but I'm guessing. So I just said it with an interlaced signal, it alternates between one set of 240 lines and then the other set, and then I think the capture card can only see one set, and then the rest would just be completely black, and it cuts out those black frames and gives you just a 15 frame shitty image. That looks really bad. I did some test recordings with like the JoJo PS2 game and it looked horrible interlaced. So you'll want to send your capture card a progressive signal. See, I keep wondering how the fuck did people record PS2 games like back in the day, you know, before we had all this HDMI shit. Because I thought maybe that's the way to do it. Just use one of those older methods. Like, because it's either that or I'll have to get a FrameMeister if I want a stable image. But again, these days I'm not that fussed about the bob deinterlacing. I think it looks fine, whatever. The thing I'm more concerned about now, like I said, is the damage to my screen. Right now I've avoided all permanent damage. Like there's nothing wrong with any of my TVs. But it still makes me hesitant to record anything. And that's why on Patreon, I put up as a goal that I'll buy a TN monitor, because those monitors, they don't actually have that problem. They're not affected by the flickering and by burn-in and shit. So yeah, I want one of those. Honestly, I think, see, I set as a goal, $100 I'll buy a fucking monitor. But I think I'll just do it as soon as I can afford it. Because it really does hold me back. Yeah. And I have this laptop now, and it's a TN FreeSync monitor as well. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? I like FreeSync. Yeah. Oh god. What else do I want to talk about? I feel like I was like on a different subject as well, and I sort of moved on. I should fucking go to the bathroom. Hang on. See, one thing I sort of kept mentioning and then never elaborating on is integer scaling. That concept. So basically, like I kind of alluded to earlier, your modern TV is on a fixed pixel grid. So if you look really closely, you can see the individual squares on your TV when it's turned on. And you have to think, I mean, games, again, are displayed as pixels, as little squares. And if you stretch the image, if you make it larger, you'll want it to be so that you only increase the size in even intervals. So ×2, ×3, ×4, blah. Because if you don't do that, you'll stretch a single pixel over multiple pixels on the grid of the TV, right? And what will happen is that it will just look very uneven, and it will start, the word that they use to describe this effect is shimmering. It will start to sort of weirdly shimmer when you walk, and I try to show this in my remakes video as well with Secret of Mana, where you could just tell that the pupils, like your character's pupils, were just inconsistent sizes. Like one was narrower and the other was bigger. And it was, the sizes would change as you moved across the screen, right? Because, it's exactly because you're, like, depending on where your eye would be sort of laid on top, oh god, I'm sorry, would be laid on top of multiple pixels on the grid. And once you start noticing this shit, like you'll never unsee it. And that stuff was very important, especially with like re-releases and emulators and stuff. And yeah, a lot of emulators and collections and re-releases, they don't do it properly. A lot of people don't pay attention to it. It's very important. And yeah, that's what I was talking about with the GameCube on the Wii U, where, or yeah, if you've ever used the Wii mode on the Wii U and wondered why are there these black borders on the screen? Why does it not just fill the entire screen? That's the reason. Because if you have to think, Wii 480p times 2 is 960p. 1080 minus 960 is 120. So you could stretch the image over the 1080p window, right? But it will look really garbled and shitty and bad. So what you do instead is you display those extra 120 lines as black space. And yes, like, you fill less of the screen, but it's just gonna look better, And yeah, what a lot of games do now, thankfully, is they find ways where they can actually stretch the entire image to the full width is the horizontal. What's the vertical? The full height of the screen. I'm an idiot. And they will sort of selectively blur some of the lines in the image, to get rid of this weird shimmering effect, right? And that's, for example, what the SNES Classic or the SNES Online app on the Switch do. And it looks almost unnoticeable. It looks completely fine. And that's really cool. So yeah, oh god. See, I've been talking for an hour. There's still stuff I want to cover though. Yeah. Like, I bought the Saturn, right? And cool console. Yeah, I haven't eaten yet. It's like Sunday morning now, as I'm recording this. The modding process was pretty fun. I had to, yeah, so, initially my plan was to just get S-Video for some of my consoles, and stick with that, because I was like, oh, okay, the quality's fine, whatever. But then I saw the HD Retrovision component cables go on sale. I was like, okay, if I don't go for it now, I might not have another chance. So they have a Mega Drive component cable, and then for that they have adapters for the Saturn and the PlayStation. Oh yeah, I should say the RetroTink doesn't have SCART input, so you need to be aware of that, right? You can use RGB signals, like if you have, for example, a component cable for the PlayStation or something, that's gonna work. But the RGB cables tend to be cheaper. Yeah, I think, yeah, like a good solid RGB cable tends to be like in the 30-40 euro range, whereas a component cable is a little bit more specialized, a little bit more expensive. But then again, you have to think, if you want to use RGB, you have to get an OSSC or FrameMeister, which are more expensive. So it is kind of a toss-up. Yeah. So I got those cables, and the quality is really nice, and I hope you saw that in, for example, with the Resident Evil video, where I had Resident Evil Saturn footage. Yeah, like the quality is it's not going to be as sharp as an emulator. There is always going to be analog noise and stuff. You have to be aware of that, you have to get used to that. But the difference in input lag is so fucking noticeable. And that, like, I cannot go back. Yeah, I had the... God, I had the... my PS3 is modded, so I can play, just whatever. Oh, this is like a whole thing as well. I can play PS1 ISO files, right? But so the PS3 already has a built-in emulator for PS1 games, and Sony, they sell PS1 ISOs in kind of a wrapper with that emulator on their store, right? Which is great. But for some reason they put like a blur filter on the PS1 downloads, which for years I didn't really notice, right? I had fucking Symphony of the Night on there, played it, I thought it was fine. But then, yeah, then I had Symphony of the Night in Japanese, Rio disc, put it in, with the mod PS3, because by default you can only play PS1 games from your region, which is really stupid. But yeah, did that, and immediately noticed the fucking quality difference, like just how much sharper it looked. And My Life in Gaming, they did a huge video about that as well. But yeah, that's really fucking weird. And then I started playing PS1 games that way, just ripping the ISOs and playing them on the PS3, and the quality is very sharp. Unfortunately, there is hella input lag, like it's pretty noticeable. It's way more than most of Nintendo's emulators, for example. Yeah, so at some point I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna get a real PlayStation that's modded so I can play, burn games on it. And yeah, again, that difference is so, like, I played Crash 1 on the PS3, and then Crash 2 and 3 on the PS1, and the difference was so fucking noticeable. And like, the games look good with component cables on the scaler. Oh yeah, and see, I said before that the PS3 is region locked for PS1 games. Same thing is true for the PS2. I mean, the PS2 is just region locked, period. But even if you mod your console, like I have, you can't get around that region lock for PS1 games. So I had to buy an actual PS1. That sucks. To this day, I have not figured out how to actually record from my PlayStation 1. My capture card, for some reason, just doesn't like it if I play American or Japanese games on my PlayStation. With PAL games, it's fine. The console is originally a PAL console. I want to talk about this as well. Like, yeah, did I talk about this? See, I sort of briefly mentioned I wanted to get a Super Famicom. Yeah, no, I think I already talked about this. That, oh my god, dude, I'm going fucking insane. Yeah, the PAL games. That even if I play, if I get like an EverDrive, which is a device that lets you play ROMs on your Super Nintendo, if I put that in my childhood Super Nintendo, it's gonna play all the games at 50 hertz, which you don't want. So I have to get a Japanese Super Nintendo, probably. See, and yeah, and that's where I'm kind of at, because, yeah, I explained earlier, I sort of went step by step. I went, okay, so first I'm going to sort out Gen 6. And honestly, it already started kind of with Gen 7, right? Where I bought a 360, bought a Wii U, right? And then I had that kind of covered. Then I went further down. Now I'm like, okay, I already have the Mega Drive component cable, and I'll need to buy a Super Nintendo component cable so I can hook up my GameCube to the scaler to play GBA games. Because yeah, I modded my GameCube so I can use the fucking Game Boy homebrew software that they have, which is like, there is an official Nintendo player, Nintendo Game Boy player. Oh god, this is getting so confusing. There's the GameCube Game Boy player. You plug it into the GameCube, and it's really cool. You can play GBA games on it, except the software on the little disc that you need is fucking garbage. And yeah, Nintendo, they just put fucking weird filtering on it, and the image is really dim, and it just sucks. So what modders did is they just made their own software to talk to the Game Boy player device, because it is a full Game Boy Advance, you know, it is just a full Game Boy Advance inside that little socket. And you just need the right software to talk to it, and it's like a whole thing, because the GBA screen actually runs at like an uncommon refresh rate. It's not a clean 60 Hz. And there's like a whole other method now with I'm sure y'all have seen this, the GBA consolizer, where it just mods a GBA to be a console, essentially, an HDMI console. Problem with that is that it clocks up the CPU slightly to run at 60 Hz, to be a little bit faster, to be more compatible with your TV. Which in theory, like, is not that offensive, and the human eye doesn't really notice it. But the games do run faster. Like, you can see it with stuff like F-Zero, where pretty quickly the clock is like way ahead on the GBA consolizer, because it's, you know, it's overclocked. I said upclocked before, overclocked. Thanks, OneDrive. Yeah. And for, I don't know, like, once, see, before I was like, oh, yeah, it's not that big a deal with the overclock, right, that the games are slightly faster. But then once I saw that, I was like, just really weirded out. Plus it's hella fucking expensive. So no, I thought, okay, I can just get a Game Boy player for really cheap. I already have the GameCube. And I have RGB cables for the GameCube, so I can test it out on my CRT. Yeah, and if you have the Super Nintendo component cables and a PAL GameCube, a European GameCube, you can actually use those cables on that console and then hook it up to a scaler or something, and then output the games at 240p, and that's really fucking cool. And again, like I said, I did that with my CRT, and it played really fucking well. Yeah, you can... See, I already tested it out with Composite as well. You can basically just tell the software to run the games at the original refresh rate and the original speed and all that. And my scaler actually supported that. It was actually fine with it when I did it with Composite. So now I only need the right cables for the best quality, and then I can record and play GBA and original Game Boy games on my HDTV. It's pretty dope, right? And yeah, like I said, I already have the Mega Drive cables, and then I'm gonna get the Super Nintendo cables. So, you know, might as well buy a fucking real Mega Drive and buy another, you know, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, to take advantage of that. Yeah. I think maybe that's where my journey is gonna end, though, with like real fucking hardware and shit. Because, yeah, the NES is like kind of complicated because it doesn't have RGB or component or anything like that. Does it top out at Composite? That really sucks, right? Like, if the NES had S-Video, I would probably consider it. I would probably consider getting a real NES. Like, right now, I can play NES games on the SNES Classic. And that's good enough for me, I think. And, like, the Master System, haven't thought about that. Neo Geo would be kind of cool, or the PC Engine, or something like that, yeah. But, like, I don't know. I think for the foreseeable future, that's, like, that's where I'm gonna max out with the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive. And I mean, I still want an EverDrive for the N64. I have a whole N64 setup that I'm pretty happy with, but I can't actually play games because I can't afford games. It's a Japanese N64, by the way. Yeah, which is kind of cool. I bought a bunch of Japanese N64 games, like Mario and Star Fox. Because for those I don't need the text, but I would like to play the Zelda games again on the N64 on real hardware. And obviously I can't do that without text, and I actually have Japanese copies of Ocarina and Majora's Mask. But yeah, I can't fucking read the text. Despite my efforts learning Japanese lately. Studying Japanese, I should say, yeah. I feel like there's more. Yeah. I think really for me the big thing was like the input lag and just there's what I kind of tried to explain earlier when I tried the PS1 on the RetroTink, for example. Like obviously it doesn't look as clean as an emulator, but there's something about it that just feels better. It feels more real. I mean it is real, right? Yeah. Shit. God. An hour and 20 minutes. What the fuck, dude? There's something I want to say. I don't know what it is. God damn it, dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, handhelds were a big deal as well. For me. Have a mod GBA. I kind of just want the GBA SP though with the better screen. Because the original model, like that's what people are kind of crazy about now, that they put the latest GBA screen into the original form factor, which is cool. I like it. But the D-pad is kind of mushy. Not the biggest fan of that. So I might just get another SP. I had the SP as a kid, but the one I had was the older model with the frontlit screen. And there's one with the backlit screen. Oh my god, I bought a Psp Go recently for like similar reasons, right? Where I had the Vita, was happy with it. My old PSP was kind of dead. And I kind of forgot how much better PSP games and PS1 games ran and looked on the PSP. Yeah, and that's kind of why I bought the Go. And it's pretty cool. The Go is so funny. Like, yeah, at the time, it was such a weird proposition, right? It was way more expensive. Didn't have a UMD drive. And, like, I mean, PSP games were still, like, new at the time, and I didn't want to pirate them. I felt bad about that. These days, it's like, it doesn't fucking matter because no one's fucking earning money off of those games. And that's why the UMD drive doesn't matter either. Like, now you can buy one. Now it's the better model, really, if you think about it. It's so weird. Yeah, I think I should... Yeah, if I get into, like, collecting and stuff, that's a whole different subject. Yeah. I hope I could kind of illustrate why this whole world of retro games and just digging into that and getting the best quality out of those consoles and, like, how fun it is to tinker with the consoles and how it's not that hard to get, to get the real experience. How it's not that hard to not use emulators, not to have to rely on re-releases, and why that sort of opens your eyes to how shitty a lot of the re-releases are. I hope that's a little bit understandable after listening to this. Yeah. Have a nice day.